The problem of eating lunch with Aggie Philpin was a sharp annoyance to me for a long time, but by the end of the year at my new school, I had found a solution. Aggie was a mistreated, undernourished, retarded girl, the youngest child of a shiftless, vicious father and a mother who had been beaten down by the cruelties of her life. Aggie must have been 10 or 11 the winter that I knew her, and even then she could hardly recognize a dozen words in the primer which Aunt Cordelia tried to teach her. She would stand beside my aunt, thus floundering through a page that the youngest child in the room could have read with ease. And after each mistake she would look around the room to grin and smirk as if the failures were evidences of some bit of cleverness on her part. It was horrible to watch. I had averted my eyes from Aggie whenever possible. But it was not Aggie's retardedness that was the party among us. It was that she stank to high heaven. Aunt Cordelia had pled to the girl for years an occasional tub of soapy water to shampoo her hair, to wash just once in a while that shabby dress which she wore every single day of the year. Aggie would grimace and mouth some half-intelligible garble, but she never lost her overripe fragrance. Aunt Cordelia stopped trying to do anything after a while. As a matter of fact, she thought it quite possible that Aggie's family could have turned upon her if the girl had showed any disposition to be different. Aunt Cordelia saw to it that Aggie was included in all of our lunch games, but what was hard for us to bear was that she was included in our little circle at lunchtime. We would try sneaking away early at noon, but we would always hear inevitably start, "Julia, Elsa, Carlotta, I believe that you girls have forgotten to invite Agnes to go with you." And so we would have to ask Aggie, and she would come galloping eagerly, usually to my side because I was Aunt Cordelia's niece. She seemed to know that I was under some special pressure to be a decently behaving classmate. She would put her arm around my neck until I learned to dodge. Then, when we were seated out underneath the trees, she would take out some unappetizing looking food, which usually smelled strongly of onion, laughing at everything that was said and inching nearer to my side each time I tried to inch away from hers. Finally, I organized a seating arrangement and did not hesitate to use my prestige as Aunt Cordelia's niece in enforcing the rules. "We will sit in a big circle, and the queen will sit in the middle. Aggie's the oldest, so she gets to be queen. The rest of us are her subjects, and we are not allowed to look at her while she eats. So of course we have to sit our backs to her. Do you know, Aggie, if we dared to look at you while you were eating, you could have us beheaded?" On the morning of my 12th birthday, Aunt Cordelia drove her car to school because she had made 2 huge angel food cakes and had iced them the night before. When I gave Aggie her piece of cake to her, she grinned in delight, and when she saw the rest of us go outside, she clambered outside of her seat. "I won't be queen today, kid. I'm gonna sit by you 'cause it's your birthday. I'm going to be your best friend." And then I did it. A thing one does not forget. I turned on an innocent human being in fury and gave Aggie's love for me back into her incomprehending face. "Don't you dare, Aggie! Don't you dare come near me!" I didn't think of what measures of discipline Aunt Cordelia might think of for me. I just gave her a hostile look as I strode past her desk, and I noticed that she looked quite tired and a little drawn. She said nothing to me. She just held out her hand toward Aggie in reassurance. Aggie seemed to be afraid of me after that. She would grin timidly at me and nod her head as if encouragement for me to be kind. Sometimes in shame, I would return her smile, but it was always a weak thing, and Aggie was never reassured. It was a hot, dry summer that year, and in early August when the heat was so unbearable. We heard that Agnes Kilpin was ill with a fever from a cut on her foot where she received no medical attention. Aunt Cordelia drove up to the Kilpins that evening, taking ice and cold fruit drinks with her, and when she came back, she told me of the futility and of the condition when she tried to help Aggie.
I wanted to bathe that poor child and put clean sheets on her bed, but Mrs. Kilpin wouldn't allow me to touch her. She said she wasn't going to have a girl catch pneumonia by having a bath. Afraid of pneumonia, but not of filth and the agony of heat, I wanted to tie that woman up and outside the room so that Agnes was cared for properly for once in her life.
I was walking the front dooryard and the sagging front steps added an ominous look to the place. I quite hoped no one would hear my light knock on the half-open screen door. But Mrs. Kilpin saw my approach and she opened the door as soon as I knocked. Aggie was lying on a bed in the corner of the room. It was a filthy bed, sheetless and sagging in the middle. And there laid Aggie restlessly upon it. Her mouth parched with fever, her eyes gazed and unseeing. The heat, the stench, the closeness of death made the place so unbearable that I wanted nothing so much as to run away from it. But somehow, however, I managed to walk closer to the bed and speak to the girl who lay there. I think I half expected to hear her call me kid again and to declare that we were friends and to see her grin again. But Aggie was another person that day. She was the dignity of solemn drama, no longer the queen seated in the middle of the circle of her mocking subjects. She was as indifferent to me as if I had been one of the housewives crawling along a spoon that lay beside a bottle of medicine on a table. I turned toward the bed with agony in my throat. If I could have kept Aggie from dying by ignoring the heat and the ugliness and the stench, it would have been such an easy thing to do. It would have been a privilege to put my cheek next to hers and to declare that we were friends. I am her friend. But Aggie was another person that day. Her look only held solid hatred for me. We heard of Aggie's death the next day, and once again Aunt Cordelia drove up to the Kilpins to get Aggie ready for a decent burial. I had never attended a funeral before. Aunt Cordelia always made an excuse for me not to go. But Elsie Delvers, Carlotta, and I carried big armfuls of flowers down to Aggie's casket. And we noticed that she looked quite pretty in death. But the prettiness was filled with such a cold aloofness. She had these copper highlights in her hair, but when the sun gleamed down on them, it added a sudden warmth to the room. She wore this soft ivory-colored dress that my aunt and the neighbors bought for her. A dress that she would have gone through ecstasy for if she could have had it while she lived. I wanted to kneel down and ask for forgiveness and tell her that I am her friend. But I knew it was impossible. So I just went back and sat down and enjoyed the rest of the service.